trip that we did 4 years ago as part of going around the world. So there was quite a lot involved. It wasn't just Saigon, we then went on further, we went to South America as well, and New Zealand. So I have to go through these fairly quickly. This is the route that we took through Europe to Moscow. To reach Moscow, it took us 26 days. Oh, it's advanced by itself. You can get to Moscow in 48 hours from London. It is quite possible, and you would change trains in Paris and get on a through train all the way. Oh, it's advancing again. Why is it doing that?
Is it on auto, do you think?
I'll keep talking. So it's possible to get all the way to from London to Moscow in less than 48 hours with a change of gauge. Now, slide 4, which is this one, it shows multiple variants of the Trans-Siberian Railway to do the whole lot in one go from Moscow to Beijing without changing trains. You can do it in 5.5 days. And we had a semi-guided tour, so we got off the train at Yekaterinburg, Irkutsk, Ulaanbaatar, and continued our journey on different trains. And there's other routes you can do as well in the Far East. And then when we got to China, we then joined a tour, a G-Adventures tour for 19 days, which was following a well-trodden tourist trail, rail-based, going to the various places which visitors go to. And then we ended up in Vietnam, to the whole length of Vietnam, down to Saigon, which is in the bottom corner. Just put this in to give us some idea of distances. These are some of the train journeys you can do. So most of them you can't do now. The longest of all ever possible was Kiev to Vladivostok. That obviously is no longer running. The tracks are there, but the trains aren't. And in fact, a lot of these now are closed to tourists. So you can see our own in this country are quite short. The furthest distance you can get between any 2 points on the globe, possibly Portugal to Singapore. So Saigon was probably not quite as far as we could get. A lot of planning went into the trip. We started planning this a whole year ahead. The Trans-Siberian Railway booked up quite quickly, and you had to get your tickets a year ahead. And then it gives you the timeline for booking the various journeys. And of course you had to get visas as well. And this was quite painful, and it cost over £800 for the 3 countries that required visas. And there's other things to think about as well: travel insurance, vaccinations, house insurance validity, and lots of take paper copies of everything. Technology can trip you up. So we don't have e-tickets, we have paper, everything on paper, sort of massive wad with me, and gradually worked my way through it. So the reason why I was doing this trip, self-explanatory. After 32 years, there I bought the champagne and the book signed by all the team and a picture. And next day, we started the journey. And all journeys start from home. And we didn't know it at the time that was going to be our last journey on a Great Western HST. And it was almost the oldest train that we travelled on as well. So first stop, of course, St Pancras. And we always look out the window, look at my 2 railway viaducts on the left-hand side, which I designed in the height of my career. A quick change at Brussels, 20 minutes across one platform to another, and then off to Cologne for the first night. And I put this one in. It demonstrates the futility of war, which is going on in Ukraine at the moment. And that mighty bridge is the busiest in Germany, was blown up by themselves 2 months before the end of the war. So I put in a few pictures of what it used to be like. I thought it was interesting as I'm a bridge engineer, so I do have more than a passing interest. It was the first fixed bridge across the Rhine in the modern era. between islands. Others were pontoon bridges. So it was built in 1859 and then expanded. And you'll see there down in the bottom left corner, a little man on a horseback statue, and that statue still remains today. It's moved around a bit. So it was then blown up, and it took 3 years to get it open for 2 tracks,
Wow.
and then 4 tracks, and then 6 tracks. Now got 6 tracks. 6 tracks. The final 2 tracks came about in 1987, and very common on the continent. Lovers padlocks. You don't get it in this country. 15 tons. DB are aware of the extra weight, but I'm not concerned. It's only half a carriage weight. It's not a big deal, is it? And there must be 500,000 keys in the water as well. So next day we carried on to Dresden. A double-decker train. We all sit in the top, of course, get a nice view out of the window. And then we came to Dresden. This is not the main station. It's another one on the outskirts. It would appear that it wasn't too badly damaged in the war. This is very typical of the continental stations. They're very large, very monumental. The waiting halls are absolutely huge. And then when you look at the inside the train shed, another interesting point, I don't know whether you can see it there, they do have an overhead movable gantry, like you get in a factory, that runs the whole length of the train shed. So if you want to clean the glass or repair the roof, you haven't got to put up acres of scaffolding like they've done in Paddington and Bristol. You just get up on the gantry and you can work over the trains and do the whole roof. And you'll see there's a check rail in the station for containment, because you wouldn't want a train to come off the tracks and knock the pillars down. So then we got on the train to the border. Most international traffic would use the Berlin to Warsaw axis further north, but we were now down in the southeast corner of what was the German Democratic Republic, and we're on a rail car, the first diesel train since leaving London. And then we got into Poland, and they've had privatisation there. You need to know which company to get your tickets from. This is Polregio, which is regional railways. I think you can work that out. I bought all the tickets in advance online in Britain, printed them all out, took them with us. No language barrier, no problems with currency. You just have your ticket and they scan the QR code. What could be easier? And at the border, it's just a cross-platform interchange to a jolly modern rail car made by Pesa in Poland in 2008, and the local operator Kolejni Dolanczewski has 9 in the fleet. Going through Poland, a bit of a backwater really, and some areas are like the rural in a post-industrial war zone, and you get a lot of this huge stations, semi-derelict, and some have been repurposed. The railways, they seem to be upgrading them, but quite slowly. They've got nice trains, but quite bad track. Then we, the way the itinerary worked out, we spent a couple of days in the southwest corner, partly known as Sudetenland. It's very Germanic. The borders in this area moved around a lot after the Second World War. And that's the station. You notice they have the platform canopy supports very close to the edge. That's unusual, isn't it? Obviously, you don't have opening doors, not nowadays anyway. They're all sliding. They don't swing open. So just as we thought we're doing all right. Oh, no, we didn't go the whole way by train. Oh. This broke our intention. So I didn't know what was going on. No announcement. Just followed everybody else. Got on the bus, and then took us next couple of stations down the line and got back on the train again. We went a bit further on to a place called Klodzeko, I think it was, and it's just sort of a rural scene in Poland. A lot of it's electrified. This was near the border, and then we went on a bit further to Wrocław. I don't know how you pronounce it. We changed trains there. They have quite an active steam scene in Poland. So this station is provided with water columns at every platform, and a little shrine there as well. And then after that, went off to Krakow. It's one of these where you have the monumental station, built 1847. That's no longer used, and they've gone down the road of having a sort of Birmingham New Street style station where it's sort of a bit, that bit's out in the open at the ends, but underneath it was all very sort of dark. We had a couple of days in Krakow, so I'll just put this in for a bit of interest. They got electric buses, which were quite incredible, really. And whereas we're starting to invent them in this country, they've had them there for since 2013, and you wouldn't even know it was electric. It was a phenomenal acceleration, and have charge points as well from a pantograph that pops up. They went to Warsaw. It's a bit of a wacky station, this one. At the time, it was considered to be very advanced, and you've got that major atrium. All the tracks are underneath. 8 platforms. It's not really a lot for a capital city, but that's what they've got. And that's what it's like. It's got these weird sort of things. I don't know if they're lighting sticks. We're looking like flower pods. It's most odd. But this was the communist era archaeology. We had popped our nose out of the door, and the first thing you see is this. We saw quite a few of these around Europe. There's another one in Riga, 7 in Moscow. There's one in Bucharest and one in Kiev. This is the sort of Stalin looking down at you kind of monument. So going across Poland, it's all fairly flat and featureless. Trying to get photos of anything is difficult. You're taking a photo through the glass. This was a Google Street View I just took, but as you see, level crossings everywhere, really. The tracks are being upgraded. So we went then for Warsaw in a northeasterly direction to Białystok. This is where it starts to get complicated, because we want to get to Russia, but we didn't want to go through Belarus. And there is one track, single line track, which goes through from Poland to Lithuania. And you go along this little branch line in the middle of nowhere to get to it. That's Białystok today. There's another grandiose station. They've still got semaphore signals there, electric wires. The picture there of the cathedral, that's not really anything to do with the railway. So we then got on a diesel rail car, and it goes all the way from Białystok all the way to Kaunas in Lithuania. It only runs 3 days a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so you have to know your timetable in advance. This is all a crucial part of the travel planning. Putting this together, it took months of work. You had to look at the timetable and then visit in the next country as well, and then work out the hotels. And I booked all the hotels January, February, based on the winter timetable. The summer timetable was different. They had less trains in the summer because of engineering work. The reason behind that, you don't do engineering work when it's -20, you do it in the summer. And we had one train in the morning, 6 o'clock, one in the evening, 8 o'clock, and then nothing during the day. So it was quite difficult. So anyway, we sat at the front of the train, looking out the front, as you always do. And then it reversed at Suwałki, and then over the border and onto dual gauge track to Kaunas. The standard gauge goes all the way to Kaunas. Now here we've got the dual gauge, and you'll see it's gauntleted. You have to do that. You can't have 3 rails. It's got to be 4 rails. The distance between the gauge is 85 millimeters. That's the width of your hand. You can't have 2 rails close together because the feet would be overlapping. So you're going to have 4 rails. And I think the standard gauge pair is on the left and the broad gauge on the right. And you can imagine it has complications for the platforms. We didn't stop anyway, but if you had a platform, you'd have to have platform one side and the platform the other side to get the stepping distance right, wouldn't you? So we didn't really know much about the Baltic states, so I looked it all up. And since I first gave this talk, I think we'll say we've got a third bad guy now. But it's changed hands a few times. It's now well integrated into European Union. And so those are the Baltic states. They're all very closely aligned with each other. And it was quite a challenge getting through, because the main axis of trade tends to be east to west. So the Baltic Sea ports from Minsk, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. Now, the standard gauge just pops over the border to Kaunas. You can see in the right-hand map there. Now, there's a project going ahead at the moment called Rail Baltic. I've got a little leaflet here, which I picked up, and the idea is to have a standard gauge line going all the way through the Baltic states and ultimately by tunnel through to Helsinki. And I've got a few technical details here. It is actually being built now. It's not a fantasy project, and it won't be a super high speed line. It has capability for 250k for passengers, and it'll be carrying freight as well. It's all part of the idea of integrating the Baltic countries into Europe, and it's achieved much greater importance now. And according to what looked up online, the cost of the project will be 5.8 billion euros, which is just a mere 8.3 million per mile. Well, I mean, that's pretty good, isn't it? In contrast to HS2, which is costing £307 million per mile, 37 times more. It can't really compare apples and oranges here, because it's all flat and it's sparsely populated. But due to the military threat from Russia, they're really getting on with it. So for the battle of the gauges, all the Soviet Union, Mongolia, Baltic states, 1520, some 1524, Finland's 1524, Ukraine, Moldova, broad gauge as well. And if you read the Railway Gazette, they're looking at trying to do some little gauge conversions there on the border to get stuff out to Poland and Romania. So that's again, I cribbed this one. I can't take that picture myself. I put that off the Railway Gazette, and that was 2015 when they got the first line in. So you get to Kaunas, and it has an unassuming end to the standard gauge, an island platform, and sand drag or ballast, pile of ballast at the end. All the other tracks in that picture are broad gauge. The island platform on the right is the international platform, and there's a border control there. We got off at the island platform on the left and walked straight out the station, because once you're in the Schengen area, there's no passport formalities. And on the far right-hand side, that's the domestic service, the local suburban train to Vilnius. And there they've got a little celebration there to show the sort of the golden buffer stop, how far they got at the moment. While we were in Vilnius, we took a little ride out on the suburban train. Absolutely massive these are. Now we were sat on the top deck, and our rucksack had no difficulty getting onto the luggage rack. You wouldn't do that on a voyage in this country, would you? I didn't actually mention it. The two rucksacks we took on holiday are down there, one each, and they were compliant for airline hand luggage. Little multilingual horn sign. Once we got into Lithuania, the passenger train services tend to be infrequent. It's mostly diesel, just the local stuff around the city of Vilnius is electrified. So we went along to Kaisidorius, a big station with few passengers. Again, a monumental station. And that was my wife there sitting all on her own in the waiting hall. And we were always the only ones to get on the train. As we were waiting, one of these freight trains came through. There's the 2M62. These are very common locomotives. They're all built in Luhansk, I think that Luhansk doesn't exist anymore. It's been slightly flattened. The M62s usually run as doubles with no cab at the inner end, like you think of the UK Class 20s. And there were quite a lot of these built for about 6,000, 5,000 or 6,000. And then we got on another Pesha rail car over towards the coast. And every station has a steam engine mounted on a plinth. This is one of the Kriegslocks, and they were very numerous as well. After Lithuania, we had a bit of a problem getting into Latvia because the trains only run at the weekends. So we were committed to spending 7 days in Lithuania. And again, only has trains at the weekend. We ended up in this place in the middle of nowhere. But it's very cheap accommodation there. We paid €18 for the night there. And then we got on a rail car to Riga, a fairly old one. I was going to say the HST we went on from Swindon was not quite, well, it was almost the oldest. This was another very old one as well, but it made a reasonable job of refurbishing it. And we came to Riga. It was quite an unassuming station, really. Only 5 through platforms for a capital city, but these are fairly small cities, 628,000. Now this has changed since we were there. On the left-hand side, they've cut a huge swathe through Rail Baltica. The standard gauge tracks will be coming through there on the left. There's not any intention to convert gauge, but it'll be overlaid with the Rail Baltica, and that's what it's going to look like. Bit like Reading, isn't it, with the curved bits coming down and lots of island platforms. 14 platforms, so it'll be a bit bigger than the existing station. And again, artist impressions. So the old station is sort of tucked away on at the side. And then as we were walking around the town, I thought it was interesting. We looked at all the city transport system as well. It's interesting here, there are 3 different electricity collection systems. You've got a tram pole, a tram pantograph, an electric trolley bus with 2 poles, which leads to some very complex junctions, but it all works all right. Obviously you have neutral sections, and you hope you don't stop at the neutral section. In one of the towns we were in, a trolley bus got gapped and it wouldn't move, and the driver had to get out and push it. So it's quite unusual. Carrying on, from Riga to Valga, we had a more modern DMU, and then we got to over the border at Valga, and I've got it all worked out. This is going to be all right, isn't it? We've got 4 minutes connection time. The trains will wait for each other, won't they? No, they don't. They've got a slight problem. It didn't work out at all. So that's the border post, masses of freight flow there, another big station. Yeah, what happens at Tartu? The signal box burnt down. How do you manage that? Run a bus service. So we should have had 4 hours to wait, and it missed by -6 minutes connection time it was, because they retimed the train to go early to allow for the extra time to go through the area where there was no signalling. How did they manage when there was signalling? Well, they just saw one train at a time, really, and a man with a flag at the level crossings. So you can always run a railway without signals, but the capacity takes a bit of a dip, and it gets a lot slower too. This was my first ride on one of these flirts. They're getting quite common now in Britain. We have a thumping great diesels engines, 2 of them, mounted above the floor, either side of the corridor. And it's quite noisy and very hot, but obviously the doors close as you go through. And then we got to Tallinn, and here we got on a Russian Railways train with a modern RZD stock, nice on the outside, but it was terrible on the inside, and very, very smoky diesels. We sat in the middle of the carriage with a bulkhead, and it's just grim. It really was. You had to sit in your allocated seat because the first thing you do, take all the passports off you, and the guard takes them along and he checks them out, and then you get them back at the border. This is how border crossings used to be. Remember how it used to be in Europe? You stop at the first bit, and all the officers go through, check your passport, stay on the train, goes through no man's land, and the same thing happens again, with dogs barking in the background, sniffer dogs everywhere. It's quite a threatening place to be. The first place we had a passport stamp since leaving, well, even since leaving St Pancras. So now we're into Russia. The Russian network is huge, but America is bigger, and China is overtaking as well. Now, I've got loads of maps. You can print them all off the internet, which I did. I took some with me, and I've got some maps here, and some I've joined up on the seat over there. And it shows you double track, single track, electrification system as well. So if it's a black line, it's diesel. Red line is 3,000 volts, and the blue line, there aren't any there, is 25 kV. So then went to St Petersburg, and it's quite an extensive suburban network. Getting around, no problem at all. So we had a little crib sheet with us, right? So yeah, take that with you and you'll be all right. And so St Petersburg, Moscow Station. So basically that's a station. It's quite obvious. That's the station you go to if you want to get a train to Moscow. What could possibly go wrong? Very large squares for parading their military hardware. We've also got very deep bomb shelters as well. So this one is 125 meters long. They reckon 125 meters is about the maximum length for an escalator, and they go very fast as well. I'm not joking, but they really move quickly, and you don't hang around at the end. And they also have a little lady who sits in a booth and sort of keeps an eye on people, so no prattling about on the escalator, going down on your rollerblades or anything. And this is a common feature in the former Soviet Union, that the stations are very ornate, and we'll see a bit more of this in Moscow. So anyway, we then got on the train, and you can see our train is at the top, 9 o'clock, I think, Moscow, and that's a huge waiting area again. And the tickets we got it ourselves on the internet, printed them out, took them with us. The train is basically the Siemens look-alike, and I'd say this is probably the fastest train in the world on a traditional railway line. It's not been specially built for high speed. This is the old line, the classic line that was built back in the 1800s. And there's a view inside the train. That's not a forward-facing CCTV camera, by the way, on the roof. It's just advertising. As the window on the left was all shattered. You couldn't see out of it. The window on the right, that's just another train alongside, which has a corrugation. But on the left, there's a opaque-looking window, and it's all shattered like windscreen glass. But it was still in service. So this is the world's first high-speed line. It was almost straight, and the legend is that the ruler, that's one of the czars, he wanted a railway, so he gets this ruler like that, made. Draws pens went around his fingers, and you had to do what you're told, you see. So the engineers built it with a bend. Good, wasn't it? Because then as now, human rights weren't a strong point. So you had to do what you were told. This, of course, is a load of nonsense. The line was built straight in 1851, as directed by the ruler, but the gradients were too severe and caused operational difficulties. The bypass was built in 1877 to ease the gradient, and the original alignment was restored in 2001 with the viaduct over the valley, and that's the Verobinsky Viaduct. And the Google aerial view, you can see the shadow of the viaduct, which shows how high up it is. and that cut off 5 kilometres. If you look carefully at the map, you'll see 206/211, dual kilometre. By the diversion. Kilometres are from St. Petersburg, because St. Petersburg was the capital before Moscow was. So we come to Moscow Metro, a destination in itself. It's quite a large system, 237 miles long, 12 lines and lots of stations. And as a foreigner, I'll say it's easier to use than me using London transport in my own country. You've got one fare anywhere you like. No offbeat, no zones. You just go in there, one ticket anywhere you like. What could, as easy as 69 pence, and multiple interchanges. Some of the interchanges you might come up to street level and go back down again, and I think it gave you 1 hour time duration in which to do it. That's how metros should be run. So you come to lots of ornate platforms and ticket halls. Most of these are the 3 vault designs. You have the main concourse, and then you've got your platforms either side, and crystal chandeliers swaying in the breeze, and it's just bizarre. So, and then you think, well, hang on, who built this? Who paid for it? Well, human rights has never been a strong point in Russia, and I think they were built by prisoners, forced labour. I'm not sure. So what the trains look like: Metro wagon mash, and these are really rickety old things, 1976, almost the same age as our HSTs. And I couldn't believe it, but the third rail was on the platform side. It's strange, isn't it? I looked over. Oh, it was just down there. Didn't look too far.
Right.
A very high frequency service every 2 minutes. So now we're getting on to the interesting bit, the Trans-Siberian Railway proper. And it has quite a complicated history. The line originally went through China, and then they diverted it because of their relations with China weren't very friendly. So we left Moscow on the blue line, which goes through Kazan. The red line was the original Trans-Siberian Railway, which also linked to St. Petersburg. And then when we got to Ulan-Ude, there we turned right, and then went through Mongolia. In the east of the country, the original route went from Chita along the Trans-Manchurian Railway to Vladivostok, and then that lasted for about 17 years or so. And they put the diversion in around the north of China, so they're all it's all in their own territory. And then later on, in our time, in the 1980s, they did build the BAM railway further north again. This gives an insight into the timetable, and there are lots of other trains departing throughout the day that go that way as well. So you can see there you've got really it's about 2 a week which go through to China, so you've got to be on it. If you miss it, I suppose you do it in stages. And this is a bit about the railways in Russia. It's 11 time zones, and the years 1904. They had the train ferries were in use up to 1904. Then they built Circumbaikal Railway, which we'll see a bit more of later on. The railway was built predominantly by soldiers and prisoners. I've got a useful book over there written by Christian Woolmer, which gave some of the history. And then started off as single track throughout. They gradually upgraded it. We're now 34 miles an hour. Doesn't sound a lot. That's but you can't go very fast anyway, because freight rules the roost. I mean, for every passenger train, there'll probably be a dozen freight trains. And apparently they've got a new BAM railway which runs to the north. So the Trans-Siberian that we travelled on, right, it's a double track throughout. The electrification started in 1929, completed in 2002. You've got a mixture of 3 kV and 25 kV. And the maps I've got tell you which is which. You can tell anyway when you look out of the window. The 3 kV DC, much heavier wires, and they usually have 2 contact wires side by side. All the rails are 25 meters long, with 6 bolts, fish plates, with 65 kilogram per meter. It's interesting to note that when you're travelling at 90 kilometers per hour, you get exactly 1 clickety-click per second. 25 meters per second, and you could go for miles and miles without even time. You look out the window and you see 4 mileposts, 4 clicks every 100 meters, and that was the speed of the train at 1 click per second. Level crossings, thousands of them, hundreds, thousands, a lot of them anyway. They all have lifting plate protection. This would be a good thing to stop incursion. You've got your barriers as well. This is an extra protection, and I guess in the winter you're going to have icy roads, so it's a falling plate like you get in car parks. You can drive out, but you can't go back. So after all this months of anticipation and planning, then we were there at the end of the station platform waiting to get on with a load of tourists. Our first locomotive was this one. 6,400 horsepower, and it's a co arrangement. Many of them are bow, like the Eurotunnel locomotives. And a view from the end, it's just as like any other station. Lots of people in orange jackets, just like us, attending to the point work. Interestingly, as you leave Moscow, the trains run on the left. And then after the suburbs to the right. And I imagine, I can't find out any information, I imagine it's a legacy of the system as it was constructed. They're too difficult to change. So I've got the high quality maps. You need to know your alphabet to read that, but I was able to follow the route. So stage 1, 25.5 hours from Moscow to Yekaterinburg. And that's 1668 kilometers, and that's just the route there. So it all gets very sameish after a while. Mrs. Sreeves went to sleep, and while I was looking out the window, every station you come to is huge, with a lot of freight. Because I mean, freight is what it's there for, and you've got quite long container flats there. I think they're probably 45-foot containers. They're certainly very long, 2 on a wagon. And it's all about minerals and oil and gas, petroleum products. Then we changed to an AC locomotive. They look just the same, really. And this is the bow. So it's got 6 axles again, but 3 bogies. And they're not particularly fast, but they're powerful. There's another station where, again, lots of freight. What happens, the train runs for about 3 or 4 hours, continuous, trundling along about 50 miles an hour, and it'll stop, and you'll stop for about 20 minutes, get off, walk around, change the locomotive, change the crew, get back on, then go on for another 3 or 4 hours, and that's how it goes on. Stage 2, Yekaterinburg to Irkutsk. This is the big one, 49 hours on the train, departing at 3:34 in the morning. It's a 24/7 railway. All the trains are sleeper trains. They just churn them out and just keep travelling. And it will go through some towns at midnight, some towns at midday. And this one we got on in the early morning and arrived then 2 days later in Irkutsk. And we were in the end one of 16 carriages, so we're in for a bumpy ride. And quite a few problems here. Because you've got 16 carriages, you get a bit of slack in the drawbar, and when they're accelerating and braking, you get a shudder. We also had threatening bit corners on jointed track and cyclic top on welded track. And the cyclic top, I've absolutely no doubt that's what it was. It was bouncy, and then it'll bottom out on the suspension, and you really felt it through the seat of your pants. It was terrible. So you didn't get much sleep at all. when we got to the end, my wife said, "I don't want to ever go on one of your stupid holidays again." I thought, well, actually, we've got a point. Even a hardened enthusiast, I think, would have sort of been a bit weary after this one. However, we did get a view out the back, and that's what it looks like. Massive bridges. Nearly all the bridges are single track, so you have two bridges side by side, usually with a big space between. It's a sort of strategic thing, so if one gets damaged, you can use the other. Lots of dead trees. I couldn't work out what that was. In Omsk, massive station, but no train shed. The rolling stock, you tend to have the dynamos to run off the bogies. I think that's probably easier because when you get to the gauge change, you change the bogie, you haven't got to take the belt off the undercarriage. And new in 2008, timetables went over to local time. So that's a timetable stuck up on the wall inside the carriage, which I just took a photo of, and you can see 3:34 to 7:35, and lots of different time zones. Safety poster, they have naughty children playing on the tracks, putting stones on the tracks, just the same as in this country. There's a lot of similarity, really. And that was another major station we arrived at. And there, this was after more than a day, the septic tank emptying vehicle went down, emptying the retention tanks. And typical of the freight, just minerals and raw materials. Then we got to the Trans-Siberian Railway. This is the old railway, and we're able to walk on the tracks. It's not used regularly. It's only used as a tourist railway now, and I'll explain why. This is the south end of Lake Baikal, which is a huge lake, the largest one in the world, I think, in terms of fresh water. And there used to be a train ferry built by W.G. Armstrong, and it was all got there in lots of pieces and assembled. And that had a capacity for 25 carriages. And then what they did then, they built a route along the south shore, and the north shore of that southern part of Baikal. And that was very challenging to maintain. There were a lot of landslides and problems with stoppages, so they built a diversionary route. And then in the end, what happens, the old route was flooded by a hydroelectric scheme. They built a dam across the river, I think it's near Irkutsk, and it raised the level of the Baikal Lake and flooded the track. So the old track is now still used as a tourist railway. It's got 38 tunnels and 248 bridges, and I'm not joking about the disaster area. 1,200 collapses. It's a seismic area as well, and you can see there it's just used about once a week, and they have a diesel train going along there. We had an optional extra to go on it, but we didn't go. We just went and had a look at the route. Stage 3 was Irkutsk to Ulaanbaatar, and this was a fairly grubby train with coal-fired heating. You've got to remember it's a cold country, gets down to -40, they run the trains all throughout the year, and you don't want to have your life support system dependent on the locomotive. So every carriage has a coal-fired boiler and central heating, and it makes it extremely dirty as well. The sun was shining through the window, and it's like dust in the air, and you're breathing it, and the windows are filthy. You couldn't see out either. So the route continues along the south coast of Lake Baikal. It's about 3 hours to do that coastal bit, quite pretty. And then it turns inland to Ulan-Ude. And this is the first train since leaving London that we're able to open the windows and look out of. So I was able to poke the camera out the window, and there you have a jointed track on timber sleepers at that point. And the compartment was pretty grubby. And that's the coal-fired boiler, and you can have unlimited hot water. So we just made ourselves a cup of soup, tea and coffee. and there's the locomotive there, another one. They all start to look the same after a while. When we got to Ulan-Ude, we met the Golden Eagle luxury train going the other way. I picked up a brochure for it, 2018 brochure, and you've probably seen these advertised. It's extremely expensive, nearly 10,000 each, whereas we just pay 2,800 each. What the locals pay, I'm not sure. We did ask the courier, they weren't sure, but we think it's in the low hundreds what the locals pay for a similar journey where they just don't have a sleeping berth. And at Ulan-Ude, this was the interesting to note the locomotives which had come off that train, just these very common, most common diesel locomotive in the world actually. This type, the 2TE10. And so we started our journey towards Mongolia, and this was where it was very slow going, jointed track all the way, and we just carried on like that out in the middle of nowhere really. And that's the end of the first part, and we're still in time for the second part.
Yeah, it depends how long the second part takes, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you need to do this film, because we'll have to shut this one open, the other one. I don't know if the other one will open the same way.
Give it a go. That's what I think about it.
I've looked at it twice now.
That's
Is that the first one? What's happened there?
somewhere. Just double click quickly, will it open?
Online, bear with us, we just
Out of interest, these are 2 rucksacks that we used for the whole journey for 6 months. That's the wife's rucksack, a little bit bigger than mine. Right now.
Right.
We need to get the full screen. But we're in business, right?
Yep. Is that where we are? Yeah.
So we crossed over the border, which took 3.5 hours, same gauge, and the air was cold, frost on the ground. So you can see we're travelling through the seasons. We left on the 1st of August, now starting to get into the autumn. And then, of course, they had a rearrangement of the train, restaurant car being moved around, extra carriages, 2 diesel locos. And throughout Mongolia, the train was timed at about 45, 50 miles an hour, not particularly fast, entirely single track with multiple loops. So when you have a passing loop, it's not just one either way, like it would be on a branch line in this country, but you'd have probably 5 or 6 tracks parallel, all stacked up with freight wagons. So the system is practically at capacity. So the railway development came late to Mongolia. Construction began in 1947, reached Ulaanbaatar in 1950, the Chinese border in 1955. And the through route to Beijing was established in 1961. The line is single track throughout, the 15-20 gauge, the same as Russia. And then double track standard gauge in China with the bogie change at the border. And I guess the line earns substantial income for international transit of passengers and freight. Mongolian Railways transported 20.5 million tonnes in 2013, which was practically system's capacity. Numerous expansion plans, some already under construction. They're going to double the track, electrify it. Most of the new railways they're putting in, which you can see there, not in line, they're going to be standard gauge because they link into China. It's all about minerals to China, really. So Ulaanbaatar, another monumental station, the classic Soviet style, built 1949, with 6 platforms. Interestingly, around the city, the traffic is chaotic but silent. Every car is a Toyota Prius hybrid. It's the ideal car you want in a gridlock city where you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So why don't we all have them? And 80% of the vehicles are right-hand drive because they're just imported from Japan. And there's one trolley bus route hardly used. There are no trams, no metro, no suburban railway. It's very underutilised really. I mean they could use the railway more, but they don't. The World Bank are going to pay for a bus lane. Can't think how that's going to help the urban transport. And this was quite a change from the Chinese train. It's very, very smart, very clean, and white. You don't normally have a white, but this one was, and it was nice. And another of these M62s. Again, top speed, not very fast, but you don't need it to be. And these are freight locomotives. There's no electric train heating. In this case, as it was modern stock, air conditioned, we had a generator wagon at the back of the train. So I went down to have a look at it, walking all the way through. When you look out the window, crossing the Gobi Desert, it's bleak. It really is. It's a high plateau between 3,000 and 5,000 feet above sea level, very cold. Average minus 26.5 in January, 18.5 in July, bleak and featureless. It has a road running parallel about half a mile to the east, which you can see with hardly anything on it. And the line is fenced with a pole route as well. And there, I just happened to get a gradient post in the picture as I click with the camera, and that's, what's that, 7 per mil for 400 meters. It's a bit hit and miss with the photography. Mineral extraction, we've got coal mines all the way along the route, and oil terminals as well. And concrete sleepers, well, that bit where, where you look out the window and see it at a passing loop. And there's quite a complicated timetable there. I took a picture of that, and it was only afterwards I worked out the timetable. So local services on the left, international services on the right. We were on train number 24 that started from Ulaanbaatar on a Thursday, continued through to Beijing, running in the same path as train number 4, which runs on a Sunday. So then we got to the border crossing from hell, 7 hours. Why does it take so long? They can do the border between Poland and Belarus in 3 hours, and this one takes 7 hours. Well, 5 hours to change the bogies. So they turf you off the train. You think, well, why bother to change the bogies? To turf you off the train, they could easily put you on another train, but that's what they do. And the bogie change takes place in a shed somewhere. And obviously we were off the train in the waiting room, and I got this off the Google. And there's a little video there as well where you can see you've got there 2 rails on the left and 1 rail on the right. So I'm trying to work out how this works. You jack the thing up, one bogie comes out, next bogie goes in, but then you've got to slew it across, haven't you? Because you'd have 42.5mm mismatch. So I don't know how it works. Explanation, please. Got to watch the Google YouTube again. So 6 o'clock in the morning, you could smell it before. If you were in China, you could smell the smoke. And we peeled back the curtains, and this is what we got: the stereotypical view of China, exactly as expected. Smoke everywhere. Just thousands of coal wagons taking coal, or empties going back, and high-rise flats. And so I can't think how many people live in there. So I think it's 30 floors high. The railway is electrified here. Somewhere in the night it changed from diesel to electric, but I was fast asleep. And stations very quiet, but then this was sort of 6 o'clock in the morning. And then you get the railway viaducts. And this is a modern feature in China, the viaducts everywhere. And this was, I'm not sure if it was a brand new high-speed line or it could have been a flying junction, I don't know. And you see the size of those piers. I imagine it's earthquake proof as well. I don't know what that thing is going up in the centre, whether it's a road or spillway. I think it's a spillway from a dam, I think. I can't work out what it is. It's not possible to see. They're in the mountains there. So you get these viaducts everywhere, and they're 30 metres long, simply supported, post-tensioned, and you'll see that's a single track one with the masts on alternate side. And if you look carefully, there's a ladder which goes down from the deck down to the bearing plinth, so you can get down and have a look. Obviously, you can't climb up the outside. There's no possible way off on that height. Then we arrived in Beijing, and we're on our own now. Left the tour. Well, we didn't have a tour guide anyway. It was semi-guided. They met us at the stations and showed us around. And that was 6 weeks after leaving the UK. And Beijing Station, again, it's quite a latecomer, only built in 1959. You have to remember, this is the main central station, but there's a north station, a west station, a south station, all having lots of different platforms. So in all, you've got 67 platforms over 4 main stations. 2 are termini and 2 are through tracks. Compare this with London, which has about 16 terminal stations, and 14 terminal stations and many more platforms. In China, you need to know your compass points. The station is going to be miles away and well out of town, serving the high-speed lines. And then the introduction to the metro. We weren't going to get a taxi. The objective of the exercise was to see whether we could do it on our own, and we did. It was a bit of a challenge, but we managed it. 3 lines, a long walk, and we got to our hotel just quite well out of town. All the stations on the metro have a platform edge screen. That's routine. Some of them were only half height. The one there, you can see the underground section is a full height, and this was a tramway going out to the park, where again you had a platform barrier to half height. Then we went on a high-speed train with the tour group. It was rail-based, so we went from Beijing south to Shanghai in the high-speed train, and 819 miles is 4 hours 28 minutes, average 183, and this would be considered a semi-fast because we stopped 3 times along the way and arrived early. It's very chaotic in the stations because everybody waits upstairs, and then the train comes into the platform, and you're called, and you go down in 5 minutes very quickly through through the barriers, and it gets very hectic. And the services, you've got quite a lot of the G departures, 44 high speed, and then you've got 3 slower ones overnight, using a sleeper service, and that some of those go on the classic line. And there's the ticket there, which we had with my name on it somewhere. £65 for that journey of 800 and something miles in 4 hours. So the facts, a lot of it's elevated. You've got the longest continuous viaduct in the world, 102 miles. It's also got the second longest continuous viaduct in the world, which is about 70.6 miles long. So a viaduct 164 kilometres long, or 102 miles, has 5,500 spans. I just made that up. It's not on the internet, but that's what I estimate from the length of each span. And it's all slab track entirely. Very little ballasting. So HS2, well, what have we got to learn? This one was done very quickly and quite cheaply. And they are very powerful trains as well. And that's what it's like on the train, getting on the train on the station. It's all unidirectional seats, ergonomically poor because we were sat right at the end of the carriage facing a bulkhead, and that's all you got was an advertising screen, and it shows the speed at that point going 345, and it went from miles and miles at say 345, 348. Then we got to Shanghai. Shanghai Metro is again quite a large metro system. This was Wednesday evening, 10:30, and it's chaotic, full and standing. And they got little stickers on the wall for the priority seating for disabled and elderly people. My wife tried to put on the old age personality, but nobody was giving up their seat for her. And there was another elderly couple on the trip with us as well. They had to stand, they had a walking stick, and they had to stand as well. All these young, able-bodied people were too busy on their mobile phones to even notice. And at the stations, you have mobile phone charging points, as you would expect. And that was some of our baggage, and the tour guide just watching over them while we went for walkabout and found a McDonald's. McDonald's is paradise. It's food that you can like. The next journey, there was no overnight sleeper on the classic route, and you got triple bunks. And interesting to note that the sleeper berths had multiple different users during the journey. We got on where the train started, so we got all the clean linen. But during the course of the journey, other people got off, other people got on, and just slept in the same bunk. But there weren't any changes to the linen or the pillows, so we just had whatever was there before.
Nice.
You don't seem to care, and because they're open cabins. I suppose you could say it's a bit more like a couchette, but it isn't because it doesn't fold away. And you had constant disturbance throughout the night. People walking past. It was right at the end of the carriage. You had the toilet next door with the whoosh of the vacuum, and people making a racket. And that took us to Xi'an. It was quite a long trip, 17 hours. And arrived early hours the next morning, and the classic station is viewed from the city. This is the start of the Silk Road traditionally, but the new high-speed line comes into the north, out of town, and it's got 34 platforms, and it's very busy. Now, how do people get their tickets? You buy a ticket online, like we do, and you go up to those little booths with the curtain, and then you do your PIN number and get your ticket. And then inside the waiting hall, it's absolutely massive. You can't believe how big these places are. And that's an aerial view, which I got from Google. And it's just mind-blowing. So you've got 34 tracks, that's 17 pairs, and they emerge from below the canopy. And then you've got, it goes to 4 tracks on the east, and then there's a complicated junction on the west side. So you can see it goes to reduces to 9 plus 6 eastward and 7 plus 6 on the other side over the highway bridge. And that's the route diagram. And then we went down to Chengdu, where the panda sanctuary is. And that's it there. And then we got to took a picture of the train. It's very sleek. These go faster. These are the 380, the latest series. And it can accelerate from 0 to the full speed in 7 minutes with 27,000 horsepower. And so I went to have a look, and what's that yellow line say? Oh, I don't know what that yellow line is. But oi, come back here! You're not allowed to go there. So anyway, I got shouted at. Went to took a picture of the front of the train, and quickly get back down the end and get on before it goes. There you are. Oh, sorry, go back. That was the ends there. So obviously look what it looks like. And they have a shrouded pantograph as well. I suppose that's for dynamic effect. And then we went to this all new high-speed lines again. It's just mind-blowing the amount of infrastructure. And another station with 26 platforms. As you go into the station, the bottom picture there, all your bags have to go through a scanner as you would at an airport. That's routine. Metro, mainline stations everywhere, they always scan your bags. Then we come to Chongqing, and that was a major junction outside Chongqing, the largest city in China, which we never heard of. 30.5 million, it's almost like half the population of the UK in one place. How many railway viaducts can you see there? Well, there's 4, plus the one we're on. And then that's the station we arrived at. And there's a sign there, all the things you can't take on the train, as if you'd try. So it's what, no guns, no grenades, no petrol, no knives, no axes. Oh, what's for? Anyway, I mean, the scanner would pick them out and probably pick you out as well. Slab track. This is the system I believe is going to be used for HS2. They're precast units, so 6 sleeper worth, and mounted on, I think it's mounted on a concrete bed, and then they sort of grouted into place, and you can see the bonding and earthing strap between the panels. So brief foray into Hong Kong. No trip would be complete without going on the Hong Kong tram. A bit of an outlier, really. You know, it's quite ancient. We then had to get to Vietnam. Oh yes, easy. Just got to do a flight, 2 hours 20 minutes. It wasn't the point, so I had to go back into China because Hong Kong is not China really. You have to show your passport and go back in, and to Guangzhou, and that's quite a big distance, 183 kilometres, just that. And then we had to go to Nanning, and then an overnight train to Hanoi. So that's the departure from Hong Kong. Picking up the tickets, all tickets booked online, picks up the ticket office. Then the next bit, we had to get across Guangzhou, and this was seriously stressful. We had 2 hours to do it. Can we do it? Well, the man in seat 61 said you could, so we did, and we did it with about 5 minutes to spare. Not helped by not doing the right connection on the train. So anyway, we managed it, and it's just a bit of a metro there. There you are. 5. This is why you have rucksacks, right? 2 rucksacks, lightweight. You don't have a trolley suitcase. You would never be able to run with it. We got into Nanning. We had to go pick our ticket up at a hotel about a mile out of town. Wacky, isn't it? We booked the ticket online. The ticket's sold out within minutes. It's like theatre tickets. The agent had to get them for us. They said, we couldn't get what you wanted. We'll just do, yeah, anything will do. Just get it. I don't care. It was first class. It wasn't the train we wanted, so we had to have that long trip across the city from one station to the next. Then that was the that's right. It was quite a long way out. No PDF printing, and that was a through train going into Vietnam, and it started to get a bit quieter now. And it was only had a few coaches, and then towards the end had one coach in use only with 30 passengers on. That was all. So we had a bit of at the border. There's no gauge change because it carried on at standard gauge. Here you can see Hanoi is on mixed gauge track. You've got meter gauge and standard gauge, and the standard gauge runs out at Ga Li Gia Lan, which is the north part of the city. So there is a connection which goes across. So you've got the standard gauge line comes in at the top, and the meter gauge line goes out on the left, on the southwest. And so you go across the river, and it's quite a classic bridge, iconic long beam railway and motorcycle bridge. And there's a single track on the bridge, and there's a shuttle train which goes backwards and forwards, just about 4 trains a day, and you have motorcycle lanes either side. And this bridge was blown up lots of times. You walk across the bridge and you can see bits of piers and bits of girders stuck down in the river, and hasn't been properly restored. It's been bodged, put it together, but it's a very important link. for motorbikes, not for trains. And that's what you see walking over it. And then you see the track gang there, no high vis, and you go down the railway street here, where the people's houses just doors open straight out onto the line, a very common sight throughout all of Southeast Asia. So we come to Hanoi Station. 9 platforms, French built, 1902, partially rebuilt after the war. There's been no expansion in the railway system since the French were kicked out after the Second World War, but China is moving in with plans for high-speed rail over the whole of Indochina, standard gauge that will be. So it's all part of their belt and whatever they call it, plan to have railway links across the world. So population 94.6 million, so it's more than Britain, and a lot of motorbikes. Single track railway. Now, what contribution do you think that has to the transport needs of a nation of that size? It's practically irrelevant. However, it's very symbolic. It's the reunification railway, linking the whole country. And of course, it was blown up many times, and it was restored in 1976. So they have a passenger service, five trains a day, all sleepers, on a sort of clock face departure of about 3, 4, 5 hours, and going all the way through from end to end, which is what we got on. So we got off at different points along the way. And the sleeper carriages are larger than the ones in this country, so lots of space, larger than anything in this country, but you do sway around a lot. That's the penalty you pay for large stock on a narrow gauge. And it was a 4-berth cabin, and we shared the 2 other bunks with a couple of German girls who are backpacking. Most of the people on the train appear to be adventure tourists, with a few locals as well. I reckon they probably use long distance coaches more, and assuming exit from the station at Huey in the pouring rain. It's all sort of run down, and it needs a bit of investment. And you have a dramatic coastal bit, which we did that bit in daylight. And the final leg of the journey, coming to Saigon, bridge upgrading works going along side. So I was able to look out the window and see this massive bridge being built, and they're obviously going to slide it into place. And then almost there, that's Terminal Station. It's just as if nobody uses it. You know, can you imagine that? Capital city, or second capital city of the country, and that was it, and the end of the line. And from there we carried on if we've got time. Do you want to carry on? Yeah, carry on. So that was, I think it was 34 trains we used to get that far, and they all pretty much ran on time except the last 2. So the missing links. When the French were in charge, they had plans to link up the whole of Indochina, and with a line through Cambodia, from Saigon to what's the name? Oh, what's that? Yeah, the next place, isn't it? Phnom Penh. It didn't get built. The Chinese will build it now. So we had to go by bus over the border. Cambodia has got a railway. It goes from Phnom Penh west and south, and it's undergoing reconstruction. And I've got a bit of a write up here. I think it's being I don't think I said much about this. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's gradually being rehabilitated with the Foreign Aid Asian Development Bank. Today, the country is population 15 million, 8th poorest in Asia, and lots of the line has been upgraded with deep ballast. So it's a great track, but no trains. They have a bamboo train. It's some enterprising people have got these little trolleys with a petrol engine on them, and you pay a little bit of money and you go for a joyride up and down on the days when there's no trains running. And the days when the no trains are running are quite a lot of the days actually. We did see a timetable. We couldn't work out if trains were running or not. Bridge works were happening along the line, but it looks as though they were having the trains going over the bridge in its temporary state. Anyway, we had to take a bus to the border to Thailand. And again, the Thailand, same gauge. There is a tentative link between Cambodia and Thailand, and it's being upgraded. If you read the Railway Gazette, you'll see that all these things are happening. So then we arrived on the other border and went across to Bangkok, and this was a bit stressful. We took a long time at the border, walking across the border, that is. Maybe got on some very old looking train made by Alstom, and there's quite a few of these around. They all sort of look old and knackered, but they seem to work all right. Very noisy, very smoky. They're beautiful stations. All the track has been upgraded. Concrete sleepers throughout. Bridges all look new. There's a lot of doubling, a lot of quadrupling of the line. Here comes the terminal station in Bangkok. Slightly reminiscent of how St Pancras Station used to be, with lots of diesel pollution and a blackened roof. There's no electrification. It was built in 1916 and has 60,000 passengers a day. However, it's destined to become a museum. In fact, since I put this show together, I think it already has. They've got a brand new station 5 miles north. Thailand appears to be one of the few countries actively investing in its railways. So no visit would be complete without a sombre visit to Death Railway. And so we went out there to have a look. To get there, the Death Railway, of course, doesn't go the whole way. It was curtailed by, flooded by a dam in 1984. And in fact, the line only ran for a very short period of about 18 months or so, and then it stopped. So we come to Tonbury Station. Again, this is a major capital city, and it's not a very big station, and that's the timetable for the whole day. So you've got about a dozen departures. It's one of these places where they've invested a lot in their roads, but not too much in the railways. But you feel as though they are upgrading, because along the routes you could say they bought the land, so they're putting in a second track. It's single track otherwise. So we've got up to Nam Tok. It's the country of cheap travel. So nearly 5-hour journey for £2.56.
Wow.
So you get to Hellfire Pass, and this was rediscovered by the Australian ex-prisoners of war who went back and they found it in the jungle, and the Australians set up a little visitor centre, and you can walk along it, and it's quite gruesome actually. The story is quite well known. You have Wampu Viaduct. People do walk along there. I'm not walking along there. I'm actually sat at the back of the train with the open corridor connection, just sat hanging out the back, taking a picture. And I've got a video along there as well. But people do walk on the railways all over the place. And so you come to the bridge over the River Mai Klong, or the River Kwai, in Kanchanaburi. Originally it had 11 spans, and then three of the spans are blown up to be replaced by the 2 other spans in the centre, which are slightly different. And then it was re-erected in 1955, and the line was reopened in 1955. Okay, to repair the bridge blown up by the Americans in 1945. Of course, we walk across the bridge as you're allowed to. And you've got little places you can stand at the side in case the train comes. It's all very casual, isn't it? And that's the Maker's Plate, made by Japan as part of their war reparations. And then Bangkok, standard gauge, electrified. There's a train out to the airport. And that's what it's like. They have just some rudimentary barriers at the platform edge, And so don't go the whole way with screen doors or anything. And then when the train comes into the station, the doors line up with the gaps. So just to stop, give it a bit of edge protection. And then after that, after Bangkok, we're just doing airport hopping really, like everybody else. Massive station.
Sorry, John.
Hang on.
Okay then. So.
Oh, there we go.
It's still online. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's just the television.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, where do you think that could be? Well, it has a distinctly English look about it, doesn't it? It's a Dunedin station, huge station with no regular timetable trains. What do you think it is? A museum and a cafe. They have a Taieri Gorge railway, just a fun run. Special trains go 64 kilometres inland. New Zealand did have quite a big railway network at one time. They had a clear out over the years, and really with road competition, there's no passengers use it anymore. The South Island, North Island have some. The South Island is just the special excursions, really like this one. Elizabeth Freight uses the railways containers there. Then we crossed over to the North Island. Now you might think that was Mongolia or Russia, but it's not. It's actually Wellington, and quite recently it's not a communist country, but this was built in 1937. Colossal, isn't it? And important to note, it's earthquake proof. 1937. Well, that's quite late on because they do have a history of earthquakes in New Zealand, big time. Look inside, you've got a busy suburban service with nine platforms, and this is all 3'6" gauge. And we had a poke inside. The train's leaving about every 5 or 10 minutes to the various suburban areas. So it's a full-blown suburban network. Has a lot of disused railways on the North Island, and they're sort of mothballed, but enterprising businesses have set up these little rail buggies. They're based on golf buggies, and they go up and down. You can hire these. The longest one you can do, 144 kilometres, so you can hire these and go all the way and then back again, or they pick you up. It's a novelty thing. You drive it yourself, and you go through tunnels, over viaducts, because the line is owned by the state railway, but they don't want it. There's no freight, no passengers, and you could just have a little bit of a fun ride on these. So the thing is, if they do want to have the line back, then it's there. And we went on one of these, but it was automated, and had track magnets to speed up and slow down, and track magnets to the little audio commentary. It's a bit wacky, really. And oh, by the way, the North Island is 25,000 volts AC. So you can see they've got incompatibility there. You thought they'd get it sorted out. You've got, when you get to Auckland, it's 25 kV, and Wellington is 1500 DC. And there's an electrified line goes the whole way, but we didn't see anything on it. I don't think anything uses it, because the whole lot wore out and they dieselised the whole service. So I think they might change that. Crossing continents to Peru. To get to Machu Picchu, you've got to go on the train from Cusco. You're way up in the high altitude. It's not the highest point in South America, but it's quite high up. You're talking about 3,000 meters plus, so you get the altitude sickness and you feel a bit heady. And world-class rolling stock, panoramic coaches. The track was terrible. It's just shaking all over the place. You think it was going to derail. It was that bad. Next country, Bolivia. You think the track maintenance is not a strong point. It's a freight line. It's carrying freight. We did hear a train in the night go past. You got a fish plate there with one bolt. So we saw quite a lot of that, actually. I mean, how much does it cost just to buy another bolt? So you haven't got a single point failure. Saw the train graveyard, Uni, and salt flats as well. Argentina. They've had a clear out in Argentina, and the railways are practically non-existent now. Desperate economic plight. Once you get away from the capital city. We went all the way down south by plane and by hire car. Then we came to Bariloche, and that's where the sort of German Third Reich in exile hangs out. They have their Third Reich reunion parties there in Bariloche. You'll see there's a railway line that goes from Weimar on the coast all the way across to Bariloche, and there's one train a week, I think it is. Terrible state of disrepair. I went out to have a look at some of the track. It was all overgrown and wonky, and it's practically on the point of closure. It's Christmas Day, that was. The station's been repurposed. It's as if the thing's just been abandoned. Quite a strong British flavour there. Lots of the railways are built by the British. It's hard to believe anything would use it, really. Then further south there's the old Patagonian Express. Well, you've all heard about that as a tourist railway. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to go on that because it only runs infrequently and it's a long way off our route. So it's one of those pictures was put in the Christmas quiz, wasn't it? So just pick those off the website. And then further on down, the mightiest narrow gauge railway ever built. And there's a heavy haul coal railway, 750 gauge, and the trains would regularly go up to 2,000 tonnes, hauled by 210-2s. The gradients are fairly easy. You've only got a 1 in 330 adverse gradient, but I still think that's quite an achievement. And that distance would take 9 hours. And this is where the locomotives, as engineered by L.D. Porter, really come into their own. They just go on maximum power for 4.5 hours, and fill up with water, maximum power again, go all the way through. And they have mechanical stokers as well. And it's interesting to note that they could achieve that with poor quality coal, which is, compared with Fuzzy Fran coal, this stuff was very inferior. And those locomotives were better than our Welsh Highland Garretts. Even further south, well, you've got to go on one of these, haven't you? It's just a novelty thing. Has all the allure of a fairground attraction. British-built locomotives, unusual 500mm gauge, built by Winston's and what's the other place in Ross and Wye? Keeps, isn't it? They built a few things there as well. That's what it looks like on a fine day. Then we a bit further on went to Rio de Janeiro. This is a tram with no catenary. They are third rail pickup. Right. Go on, touch it. It's quite safe. Would you touch it? one hand there, one hand there. Well, you can do. It activates itself as the tram passes over. It's called the APS system. By who's that? Is it Alstom or one of them? I think. Or, anyway, that's how it works. Inside the tram, squeaky clean. Couldn't believe it. How did we get that photo? Well, we got to the terminus and everybody was just getting out, and we just took a photo before the whole next lot heaved in. And then finally, and that's the end. And all journeys finished, and that was coming through ticket barrier at Swindon 6 months later. And sadly, that's the end. There'll be no more carefree travel for anyone. Hot on the heels of COVID and Brexit, we now have environmental issues to consider, and the war in Ukraine, and the ability to go anywhere you want to is likely to be curtailed. If governments are serious about global warming and pollution, stopping travel will be one of them. So we did well. Thank you.
Okay, well done, John. Thank you very much indeed. In lieu of the time that we've gone, we're not going to have much time for questions now, but I didn't want to stop you because it was interesting to hear what you had to say. If there are any questions, we'll take a few quick questions if anyone's got any. Dick?
Yes, you have always photographs in places like China and so on, where they're very sort of suspicious of foreigners and security conscious. Did you get challenged at all by taking photographs on any of the stations anywhere?
We had no problem with photography at any point. through Russia, Mongolia, China, or Vietnam. They're all communist countries, all very authoritarian. We had no problems at all. Bear in mind that we were on a well-trodden tourist path with a tour guide. I did make that incursion over the yellow line at one point to get a picture of the front of the train. But things have moved on a bit since the 1980s, when I got arrested in Yugoslavia for taking pictures of the steam locomotives. So it's quite okay.
David.
It's more of a statement than a question.
Yeah.
I'm very envious of you because I booked to go on the Trans-Siberian in 2020 and it locked down.
Dismissed it.
Transferred to 2021, lockdown. And this year,
Yeah.
I was a little bit concerned with Russia, so I decided to cancel. So I missed out on that one. I'm very envious of you.
It's one of those things where holiday of a lifetime, and one of my colleagues at work, he was talking about it, and he lost his chance as well. And really, I was following the footsteps of my daughter, you could see in the picture there, and the boyfriend. They went around the world 2 years earlier than us. They didn't use the train there, they just did airport hopping the whole way, but all of South America and Southeast Asia just did the same as them, really. So I had my own travel agent there to help me.
Yeah, Argentina is disappointing considering it's such
Yeah.
a big country. And I went there and all we did was fly from city to city.
Yeah,
I did go down to a shy though, to the
yeah.
most solid railway in the world.
Okay.
I've got one from online. It's from Joan Heary. She writes, apologies, I have to go, but it's been a fantastic talk. I love travel. I'm quite envious of your adventure. Where are you off to next?
Where we're off to next? Well, next week we're going to Horton in Ribblesdale.
Quite exciting.
And we're going to walk the Pennine Way to Edale, and then we're going to get on the train and we're going to go back to Swindon. That's where we're going next. No, seriously, I think the appetite for travel is diminished somewhat. It was one horrendous exercise. We were in a state of hypervigilance the whole time. You're like this, where's your passport, where's your money, where's the bag? And you're always wondering if someone's going to nick your stuff. And you've got language difficulties. I wouldn't say it's impossible. You have your little tablet with Google Translator and Wi-Fi. It was available everywhere. But it was, it's one of those things where a lot of planning went into it. A lot of things could go wrong. A lot of things didn't go wrong. In fact, everything went exactly according to plan. That's not what you want to hear, is it? What happened? Do we lose anything? Yeah, we lost a toothbrush and toothpaste. That's all we lost in the whole 6 months. I wasn't going to worry about that.
You also did a lot of the planning before you went, didn't you?
The planning was horrendous.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that we did this, started a whole year in advance. So it went off in August 2018. We started to put together the bare bones in August 2017. The first thing to do was to book the Trans-Siberian Railway. At that point, all the first class berths were full, and we had to then get a second class berth and buy 4 tickets for our sole use. So that increased the cost. Then that was one block. The second block was through China with G Adventures. The G Adventures is the sort of low-end student travel market, but there was a mixed age group, and we had an elderly couple older than us on the trip as well, 16 people. And then the rest of it we did ourselves. I mean, with the internet era, you could do everything from the comfort of your lounge. They did all the booking. So all the hotels, done booking.com, hotels, Expedia, e-bookers, book the whole lot in the winter. You had to, because otherwise the hotels would be full. And then you had to take a fly up the railway service, and that was the problem, because I based it on the winter timetable, but the summer timetable was less because of engineering works. They do it in the summer. So you had a train in the morning at 6, the train in the evening could be at 8 o'clock, nothing in the day. So you had quite a few early starts. We had to get to the railway station early and leave the hotel, and quite a few late finishes where we didn't know if we were going to get to the hostel in time, about 10:30. So, and that's how it worked out.
Rocky, go on.
I'd like to see this again in a book. You've been at breakneck speed, high speed, really high speed. I don't think I've absorbed it all, but a tremendous trip.
No, indeed, yeah. Well, yes. This is one of those things where when we go next day, you have that desire to travel. It's inbuilt, isn't it? We're all railway enthusiasts. Where can we go by train? I've been watching the what they call the Great Railway Adventures on the telly, and they've got with some nice lines, which we could do, but I don't know. It's so difficult now, isn't it? Even just to get across to France is difficult. They've got to have fingerprints now.
It's not too bad.
Well, yeah, but they're bringing in the fingerprints, aren't they?
I'm going in 10 days to Portugal by train.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Across Spain, and I'm also going to Austria and Italy at Christmas. So
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get out there whenever I can.
But one thing I didn't mention is that on the accommodation, we booked the whole lot ahead, right? Because we're not in the game for sleeping in the waiting rooms or in bus shelters. I did it when I was a kid, right, when I was a student on the Interrail game. But you get to our age, we like to be a bit more dignified. And so what we did, every major city we arrived at, we booked accommodation within walking distance of the station. So I had it all printed out, had the town plan and the hotel booking confirmation. So you walk out the station to the doors, all the taxi drivers are there waiting to mug you as a tourist. No, I'm not having that. Don't maintain eye contact, walk straight up, and don't use the metro, don't use a tram, walk to the hotel or youth hostel, and then stay the first night there. Next day, they'll sort you out, and you can ask the people who speak English, right, what's the best travel card ticket to get? There's a whole town in the next day. Normally we had 1 day travelling, 2 days in a town, 1 day and then 2 days like that. It worked out quite well, because you get a bit sick of it if you're sat on the train all day, every day, and so you have to break it up a bit. And also, Helen is not really a railway enthusiast. She wanted to see a few museums as well.
You know, I have slight problems like that with my wife.
Okay, well, I think it's 20 to 8, and we've lost a few already, so...
Yeah.
If you want to see a video, you can. Is it time for video?
Well, I think we'll draw it to a close.
Okay.
We'll leave the thing on. If anyone wants to see it,
If you want to see it.
afterwards, we'll put it
Yeah,
on.
we'll put it on,
But let's formally close the
Well, close
meeting,
the
because
meeting, yeah.
we've got all of the online people as well.
Yes, okay.
So, Richard, I understand you're going to
Yes,
vote
I
to thanks.
volunteered. It's not.
What?
No, that's all right. I'll just get in the view of the camera. It's not normal, I think, from what I've seen of the Thames Valley section, for the secretary to give the vote of thanks. But I decided I'd like to do it tonight because I've known John for many years. In fact, you were one of my first friends here, who before anyone else spoke to me when I came along about 10 years ago.
Oh, it's a lonely place.
Mark was another one. That's good. So we've grown up together. But I wanted to give those thanks. I have to say, this puts my West of England Rail Rover ticket in for a week into perspective, really. And I won't go on very much, but you know, the boggling variety of
We've got
stuff
no
we've gone
gauge.
through.
Yeah. Have you got gauge on?
Well, no,
Is this
no,
a basketball?
yes, could change in 1 or 2 places. So a huge variety. 2 or 3 things struck me about what you showed us, apart from the number of countries you went through. And I too was interested in the whole business of whether you were going to get arrested for taking pictures anywhere. But it's amazing what one actually finds somewhere compared with what the media might sort of make you think. But I was struck by the contrast between that very, very sharp-looking Chinese train with a real front, which you did take a picture of, and then a coal-fired stove to keep you warm as you crossed Russia. My father had thought of going on the Trans-Siberian, and I was thinking about it, but I don't think I will now, but who knows. But the 1 or 2 other little points, you mentioned getting to Saigon, was it, where the station was very, very simple, the end of the line. And that reminded me of Canberra, another capital city of the world, where you can go down a single line branch line, and it's just a little station, and there's no buses to take you to your hotels. There's one small minibus, and the chap says, where are you all going then, folks? And we all say, well, we're going to this hotel, and all right, we'll get in, we'll do a tour of Canberra. And anyway, you would go and see everybody else's hotel as well. And Jeremy, you'll remember at Wellington, I sent you a photograph of their stop block arrangement, which was of a large concrete block with some big coil springs in between. That was one of the early things I sent.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So there we are. So John, tremendous variety.
Thank you.
I think everyone's enjoyed it. I hope so. Nobody's gone to sleep yet. We can't. The book would be good. The variety of trains, it's interesting how countries that you think are not very far ahead actually have very modern stuff.
Indeed, yes.
Poland, for example, tremendously modern stuff. So a different perspective on how life
I think
goes.
the European Union probably has something to do with that.
Oh, right, lots of money.
A lot of money, and it's going on all the time. The Rail Baltic, I think, entirely financed by European Union.
Right.
And I've travelled to Romania as well. See new viaducts going in everywhere, new alignments. So,
okay, you'll tell us about that another time.
Yeah.
My passing memory is the single bolt fish plate. This sounds a very easy way of getting on things. So there we are, folks. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Excellent evening, and we'll follow it up. I'll do a write-up for the news.
Thank you.
Right, come on, chap.
I'm gonna